Now, we've been looking at sumigeshi and or the hook sweep as it's often referred to. Um, it's probably fair to say that most people start their journey with the hook sweep with chest to chest contact. What does this mean? From a situation where we're in front of our training partner, the standard methods of applying hook sweeps or sumigeshi based attacks almost always involve some kind of chest to chest contact, like so. Arguably, the best method of enforcing chest to chest contact is belt gripping, where we go over an arm and get a hold of our training partner's belt. Another one is to go underneath our training partner's arm and either take the belt, the gi, or just a hand on our opponent's upper back. But whether we go under an arm or over an arm, chest to chest contact is the gold standard when it comes time to apply sumigeshi. Why? Because it creates very, very close body contact that makes it pretty easy for us to get our center of gravity underneath the center of gravity. Always remember that every hook sweep has the same basic criteria. I've got to be able to get underneath my opponent's center of gravity to impart a lifting force. The closer I am to him, the easier that is. And the belt provides an artificial force multiplier, which enables us to get his hips up high, like so, and our body underneath his. And from here, the sweeps come pretty easy. So most of the time, it's very much to our advantage to look to get to the belt, either over the arm or under the arm, and bring our opponents in close. However, we can't always rely on getting that desirable chest-to-chest contact. In fact, I believe it would be a serious mistake to only practice sumigeshi out of chest-to-chest contact, because that will greatly diminish the number of opportunities you get to apply this sweep. There are many fine grips which you can use with devastating effect to take people over with hook sweeps that don't involve chest-to-chest contact. So, for example, we should be effective with sleeve lapel grips here and here. Even cross sleeve lapel grips can be effective on occasion. Not quite as good because you're not controlling both sides of your opponent's body, just one side, but still not bad. And arguably the best non-chest to chest grip is ones where we get the scapula right here, high up behind my training partner's trapezius and scapula. This enables strong control of our training partner's head and makes it quite possible for us to start drawing people forward. Okay, so we can often make contact with our opponent using these grips. Some other grips that we'll often employ, switching our position so you can see this. Shoulder grips can be very, very useful. There's always a flap of cloth behind our training partner's shoulder, which we can use this as a strong drawing force to start bringing people forward. We can even make use of tricep grips, where we get a grip on the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve and use this as a strong pulling force. When Mateus goes to yank away from us, the whole idea is always to bring his head forward, push his head across, and tilt our training partner over. Anything which enables us to draw his center of gravity in towards us is going to work. However, there's a stipulation. If we find ourselves in a non-chest-to-chest situation where there's distance between his chest and mine, the onus is on us to do a better job of drawing people forward by lifting our elbows so that we can bring their center of gravity up and over us, and we can shovel our bodies under theirs to create lifting forces that are going to put strong opponents on their back. You don't have to do this to the same degree when you start chest to chest with belt grips. It's easier. It's done for you by the belt. So I can be a little lackadaisical with sumigeshis or hook sweeps when we have belt grips, because the belt naturally brings my training partner into situations where from here we can start creating strong lifting forces. But when we work out of situations where we don't have direct chest-to-chest contact, we've got to do a better job of really bringing people in and working to pull with our two elbows to bring his body forward. Always remember that in every sumigeshi, just on two knees, everybody, our intention is always to bring his center of gravity, represented by this area here, just up beneath the navel, forward past his base of support, his knees, and to get our opponent broken forward so his balance is broken right there on the knees. Then, if we can take one of his sleeves across his chest into that broken position, that's when you can put people down and sweep them. Okay? So, when we have an opponent here in front of us, and we're working without the benefit of direct chest-to-chest contact, we have to do a good job of drawing our training partner forward. Look how from a sleeve lapel grip, as we work in with our training partner, and we get sleeve and cuff, just like so. Look how from situations like this, I have to do a better job of pulling my body in towards him, and then from here, lifting, turning people over. So I have to bring the hand in and lessen the distance between us. I'm not starting with chest-to-chest contact, but if I bring him forward into a situation like so, it's as though he were chest-to-chest now. He's close enough now that even when he puts his legs out for base, from here, we'll be able to place him up and over and into a winning position. But the onus is on us to draw him forward. When we go to use lapel grips in this fashion, it's important that we turn the hand like so and bend our wrist so that we diminish space between us. I can't have situations where my two arms are stiff out here and I try to draw him forward with no effect. There's so much distance between his chest and my chest, this will never succeed. So it's important under these circumstances that we bring him forward into our body. Okay, and it's from situations like this, even when he bases out with his legs from here, we can start turning people over with sumigeshi and getting them down. Similarly, with cross gripping. From here, I have a cross grip on my training partner. As I feel my opponent pushing, pulling, etc. From here, we go in, we secure our training partner's sleeve cuff. Look how from here, I throw my body in underneath my training partner and I use that grip to draw him forward. As his head comes to my head, that's exactly when from here we can start putting people down. The measure of whether you're doing a good job with your gripping is his head position relative to yours. The further his head from my head, the less effective my sumigeshi or hook sweep will be. So our whole thing, whether we're gripping straight or whether we're gripping cross, is always under these circumstances to bring our bodies into this kind of head-to-head position. Okay? So as I throw my body through underneath my training partner and bring him in head-to-head, that's when we can start taking people over. Now the best grip to do this with is always that scapular grip. And this is a very fine way to sweep people over, even in situations where you don't have that direct chest-to-chest contact. So as my opponent's going to pull away, look how we just go over the top and we get that grip high up behind my training partner's neck and head. It's typically done with a cross grip, which enables us to access in like so. Now, as he goes to pull away from me, it's not that hard for us under these circumstances, posturing, pulling away, to bring the head down. We can draw people in towards us, and then from here, from very, very strong sumigeshi to knock our opponent over. Alternatively, the shoulder grips, similar to scapular grips, enable us to go forward on a training partner and control our training partner's shoulders. When he goes to yank away from us now, those shoulder grips are very, very strong indeed. And we can use these to create very, very strong lifting and throwing effects. So it's another excellent grip that we can make use of in non-chest-to-chest situations. And then probably the longest range grip of them all, a tricep grip. When someone's gripping in like so, we just go through and we grip down here at the tricep. This is a superb pulling grip. He goes to pull away from him. This grip's not easy. We go through on the second grip. Now we've got double sleeve, one high, one low. As he goes to posture up and away, it's not easy. And look how now we can just bring our training partner forward and sweep them in with a fine sumigeshi action against as well. So these grips represent an excellent way for us to work in situations where you cannot get the favored chest-to-chest position. Of course, if you have a choice, get to that damn belt. That's the best grip of all. Nothing will ever beat the idea of breaking my training partner's stance and getting through to a belt grip, because this one really does lock his head to a position head-to-head with you. When he tries to back away from this grip, it's shockingly difficult. And your head is so close to his here that the sweeps come very, very easy indeed. Okay? But I'd be a liar if I said to you, you're always going to be able to get that belt. You're always going to be able to get your opponent in the perfect head-to-head position. Sometimes jiu-jitsu is a competitive sport where everyone knows the same moves and everyone knows the counters to those moves. We have to be able to work with less than optimal grips and still be effective. Learning to sweep people with sumigeshi or hook sweeps without direct chest-to-chest contact is a big part of making you an effective sweeper out of butterfly guard. Now, we've been looking at the hook sweep or sumigeshi, and everything we've done so far was done from a seated position. There's a reason for this, because seated variations of sumigeshi are inherently stronger. Why? Because they incorporate falling body weight. When I'm in a seated position and I have an opponent here in front of me and I bring them in and I fall to the floor, I carry the momentum of my fall into the sweep, and as a result, we can take people over. So if we have an opponent here in front of us, and we get a hold, say, for example, of their belt, from a situation like this, the fall from a seated position immediately puts my opponent into a situation where he can get taken out of balance, okay? So that's why we generally favor starting from a seated situation. However, jiu-jitsu, you often have to be effective in less than ideal situations. And sometimes you got to be able to sweep someone from flat on your back. And a natural question to ask is this possible? Can you take a resisting opponent from a situation where you have no falling momentum, just a dead start, and flip them over? The answer is yes, but you got to know what you're doing. So, first method is just to go from a supine situation back up to a seated position. This requires you to perform a movement known as the forward shift. Okay, a forward shift involves me starting on my back and extending my legs along the mat, so that I go from a supine position up to a seated position. Okay. Typically, we begin by bringing our knees to our chest to elevate our training partner off the floor, and then we lift our feet along the mat to sit up. Don't bring your feet up high into the air. That's not the idea. So, in the situation where I start off, flattened out like so, we're going to get a hold of our training partner. I bring my knees up towards my chest, and then we lift up and extend forward. So you went from supine situation to seated. Okay. Now, often it's a good idea to get your grips first. So I get a hold of my training partner's belt and I have my hand in close to his elbow. Then from this position, look how I use a forward shift, bring him forward shift, and now we're ready to go. When he tries to resist the sumigeshi, there's only a few seconds here to operate, and as a result, we send the man flying. Once again, we start off in what most people would believe is in a position where you couldn't hit a successful sumigeshi. Okay, here I'm flat on my back and I have a dead start. So it's going to be very difficult from here to lift someone over, because we know we're supposed to be on our side for sumigeshi. This is the sweeping position for sumigeshi on my side. Okay, if I'm just flat on my back here, this is not promising at all. If he brings his knees in tight, hunkers his hips down low, he feels like he weighs 1,000 pounds. And when you try to lift from here, it's impossible. Okay, so we don't. We just take our hips off the floor, our knees come in, and we hit a forward shift. Now, because we're seated, we can fall over to the side. Even as Mateus prepares himself for the sumigeshi and tries to resist, from here, it's an easy thing for us to send the man over. Okay, so that's always our first response. Let's get that fellow up in the air by getting our back off the floor and bringing momentum back into it. So a forward shift is the mechanism by which we do this. Running through this again, we start off in what seems like a losing situation, flat on our back. That's not good for sumigeshi, and his weight bearing down on us, coming in tight. This all looks bad for sumigeshi. No problem. We get to our grips. There's our belt grip, there's our hand grip, there's the forward shift. Now, as he goes to resist, you can employ momentum into the move. Always the direction is forwards on the sumigeshi. I never go straight into his base of support. There's no success there. Sumigeshi is all about going in the forwards corner. It literally means corner reversal. We block our training partner's arm, and from here, we can send the man over with a nice high amplitude sumigeshi attack. This is one excellent way, utilizing a simple movement known as a forward shift, to employ sumigeshi successfully from what seems like an unpromising situation flat on your back. Now, we've been through enough sumigeshi for you guys to realize that the best sumigeshi attacks typically involve me being on my side, where we have a lifting leg and a drive leg. Okay, the drive leg takes us up off the floor, the lifting leg moves our opponent, and because we're on our side, we can start tilting people over and coming up into this position here, so that our drive leg is on the floor like so, with our knee on the mat, and from here we can lift people very, very strongly and create a beautiful sweeping effect. Every so often you're going to find yourself having to sweep out of positions where you're flat on your back. Mechanically, this is not good. So we've got to be able to do something to be effective sweeping from here. We can't just try and lift with one leg. In these situations, we've got to do something to get some kind of mechanical advantage so we can make the sweep work. In the previous move, we looked at the idea of a forward shift, and then we could convert our body to fall onto the side. Well, there's other methods too. For a situation where my opponent's in tight here, we're just going to get a hold of our training partner's hands, just like so. It's going to come in and hold like so. Now I take one hand underneath and I get a grip here on my training partner's sleeve cuff, just like so. So I have the following grip: sleeve cuff and tricep. Okay? Sleeve cuff and tricep. Now we're going to employ a knee pull. The idea behind a knee pull is that it puts our training partner's ear next to our ear. Look how far Mateus's head is from my head. If I try to lift from here, just make a heavy body, Mateus, it feels like he weighs 1,000 pounds, so you'll never lift anyone from this position. So our whole thing from here is to use a knee pull to bring his ear next to our ear. And now from this position, I just post my hand on my training partner's ribs. His right hand is caught on my chest. It's hard for him to base out from here. And even though I'm flat on my back, it's not a difficult thing for him once his hips go higher than his head for us to start a tilting action. It gets our training partner's body up and over, and we successfully sweep. So once again, we start off in what seems like a very unpromising situation. Flat on our back, just like so. I go through and I take my hand underneath and get that cross cuff grip on my training partner. We get a sleeve grip, and even as he tries to back away from us, look how we can use this grip to use our feet and a knee pull, our knees pulling in towards our chest, and bring him forward like so. Now from here, I just post my hand on my training partner's chest. Even as he reaches for the floor with his feet, it's a difficult thing when the hips are higher than the head. And as a result, we can create a nice elevation on our training partner that turns our man over and creates a beautiful sweep. So once again, facing in this direction now, we start off just like so. We come through, we get our cross cuff, and as always from here, we start with a knee pull that draws his ears to our ears. From a situation like this, as he reaches for the floor, it's a difficult thing. We're controlling our opponent's balance here with our two legs. And then we just make his chest face the ceiling, we close everything in, and we get a good rotation. And as a result, a clean sweep to the ground. It all worked because we began by pulling his center of gravity in towards us. And then from here, we can start flipping people over. Done in this fashion, you can be very successful, even from flat on your back. Now, we've been looking a lot at butterfly guard, and the principal weapon from butterfly guard when an opponent is on two knees is sumigaeshi, or the hook sweep. Now it's time we start to look at the active role of our legs prior to the application of sumigaeshi. This is an important point. I'll take this position here, and Mateus will be on two knees here in front of me. So far, everything we've done has just presupposed the idea of inside position, either in a square stance with my feet like so, or in a staggered stance with my feet like so. Okay? We don't really have any active connection to our opponent's legs. The idea is that whenever we go into any kind of sumigaeshi, we've been demonstrating mostly off belt grips, that we want to fall to a given side and take our training partner in the direction of the rear corner if he bases out, and that's going to be the direction of the sweep. You'll see that I'm on my side, and everything here is about that drive to the corner that puts my opponent down to the mat. Okay? Pretty soon, you become good at sumigaeshi, your opponent's going to realize that sumigaeshi is a technique performed on your side. And what they're going to be very interested in is the idea of flattening you out onto your back, so you fall onto two shoulders instead of one. And if Mateus can do a good job of this and drive me straight backwards, it's very, very hard for me to hit sumigaeshis from this position. Okay, this is not mechanically advantageous. I want to be on my side, not flat on my back. So there's going to be a contest here when we first get into this position. I want to drive things in the direction of the sweep. Okay, that's going to be my prerogative. And Mateus is going to be using head position to drive me flat onto my back. And if he can do so, he'll probably prevail in this situation. So there's going to be a contest for direction. He wants me driven straight back in a straight line to two shoulders. I want myself falling to the corner onto one shoulder. Now, a natural question to ask, who wins this battle? Okay, is it just going to be the bigger, stronger guy on top, or is it going to be the more technically adept guy on bottom? Well, there is a way to not ensure, but to make it very likely that you'll take things in the direction you want from bottom position. And this is to actively use your legs, and in particular your feet, as frames upon your opponent's hip to knee, anywhere from the hip to the knee. There are two main frames that we work with, X frames and A frames. Okay, an X frame, as the name implies, involves my feet forming the shape of an X around one of my training partner's legs, in particular the leg on the opposite side of the sweep. So if I want to sweep to my right hand side, it's around my opponent's right leg, or on my left hand side, that we're going to make our hooks. I have one foot like so, and the second foot goes underneath and locks. So if we just change the angle a little bit, Matthias, around this side, I have a butterfly hook in like so, and then I come around and I actively hook onto my training partner's leg. What this does is it creates situations where when we first go in and get grips, this side of my opponent's body is controlled by two of my feet. So when Matthias tries to drive into me, I can use my 2 feet to push back, and I can get my opponent moving in the direction of the sweep that I want. Okay, he's going to start pushing into me, taking your leg up for this, and from here I can start pushing him in the direction of the sweep. Okay, this X frame is a pushing frame. Okay, it doesn't have any ability to pull, but it certainly does have a good ability to push. So when Matthias goes to drive into me, what he's looking to do is advance his knees towards me and bring his knees in tight and compress my ankles to my buttocks. And now it's very, very hard for me to sweep. Okay, but if I form a successful X frame in front of my opponent, he cannot push in nearly as effectively against the strength of both of my legs. And I can almost always, from here, start straightening him out. As a result, when Matthias goes to push into me, I'm almost always able to move Matthias in the direction of the sweep to the corner. It prevents what he wants, the ability to flatten me out, touch both of my shoulders on the mat, and bring my feet in towards my buttocks. This is an extremely effective way to ensure that you go to the corner and sweep on your side rather than get flattened out right from the outset. So once again, we start off here in front of our training partner, and look how I take my feet and I go around my training partner like so. Now I take my cross grip, I pull in on my training partner and expose the belt. When Matthias goes in here to flatten me out, look how I can use this grip to hold him off. Okay, it keeps my knee nice and high above the height of his hip. If my knee ever goes underneath Matthias's hip, that's a disaster. Okay, we always want our knee higher than his hip. When he tries to bring his right knee in towards me and compress me and put me flat on my back, look how from here I can use my X frame to take him out to my right hand side. That's where I want to be. Okay, now from here, it's an easy thing for us to take the man over and get the sweep we're looking for. Now that's the X frame. That's one excellent way to work against forward pressure when my opponent is pushing into me. Because the great virtue of the X frame is it enables you to push back strongly. It's a pushing grip. The great defect of the X frame is that it has no ability to pull. It's exclusively a pushing grip. Okay. An alternative is an A frame. The great virtue of an A frame is you can both push and pull. The idea is that my legs form the shape of an A, just like so. Okay, and one foot is supported on the other leg, so that I have my right leg as a brace for my left foot. So when my opponent pushes into me, I can push back with my left knee and shin, and I can hook with my bottom right leg, so I can pull with my right leg and push with my left. This keeps my knee high above my opponent's hip and enables me to tilt my opponent in the direction of the sweep. From here, send the man over. So we start off as we've been doing, just like so, and I put my foot right in this position. Okay. Now, as I draw my training partner in towards me and bring him in, we lock our leg around his, forming a grapevine around our training partner's lower leg. This enables us to go through in the usual fashion and access our training partner's belt. When Matthias tries to push into me, my left knee and shin make it quite difficult. Okay. At the same time, if he tries to pull his right leg away from me, it's locked in place. So I have an ability to pull in with my right leg, an ability to push with my left. And my knee is in the desirable high position outside the hip. Once again, if my knee is ever lower than his hip, that's just a disaster for Sumigaeshi and for butterfly guard in general. So we always want our leg hooked in place. When he tries to put forward pressure, my leg is framed. It's very, very hard for him to put any serious forward pressure on me. And it's very easy for me now to use my body to tilt out in this direction here and get him moving in the direction of the sweep. I release the A-frame now, and now we're in the perfect position to send the man over and get the result we want. So once again, we start off with an opponent here in front of us. I start off by drawing the man inwards. Okay? As we pull him in, my leg hooks around his. My left knee is higher than his hip. When he tries to move away from me, my right leg makes it difficult. When he goes to stand up, it's difficult for him to get his leg far off the floor and get all the way up. And it's very easy for me at any given moment to send the man through and sweep. I'll demonstrate this with our feet towards the camera so you can see what's going on here. We start off by pulling our training partner in. Okay, as we draw the man inwards, we lock that A-frame in place. Now we access the belt, and from here, with my toes pointed down toward the mat, you have an excellent control over your training partner's lower leg. When he tries to push in, my left leg is supported by the right leg. From here, you have an excellent ability to control the movement of your opponent like so. Now I start tilting him in the direction of the sweep. I release my foot and send the man through, and we end up with a nice sweep down to the floor. Using these two frames, X-frame and A-frame, is a valuable way to ensure that you get your opponent moving in the direction of the eventual sweep. What I don't want to do is get flattened down to two shoulders and my feet compressed to my buttocks. What we do want is to fall ultimately to a side with my two legs in a position where I can take the man over. And the best way to do that is to lock either the shape of an X around one leg or the shape of an A around the leg and hip. And from here, we now get an ability to move our opponent in the direction of the sweep and then go into the sweep itself for the finish. That's a very useful way to ensure that the sweep goes in the directions you want prior to the application of the Sumigaeshi. Now, you'll remember from the beginning of this video that a major theme of this open guard video is the idea that there are a certain number of tactical and mechanical operations that we can impose on an opponent, which makes the job of sweeping from open guard significantly easier. So, for example, getting both of our opponent's feet off the ground, controlling both of his legs to knock him down to his hips, etc., etc. One of the most important of those tactical elements was the idea of an arm trap. Okay, this refers to any situation where I take my training partner's elbow across the center line and trap his arm across the body like so. This always creates a situation where my opponent has no ability to base out with his upper body on one side of his body, precisely the trapped arm side. Okay, so he can base out with his right leg, but he has no ability to base out with his right arm. And as a result, we can greatly increase the effectiveness of our sweeping from open guard positions utilizing this principle. Okay. The basic idea that we're going to be working with in the next few moves is the idea of getting a cross cuff grip on our training partner, taking the elbow across the center line and then locking our arm all the way around it like so. Then taking my second hand through as an underhook and holding on to my training partner either at the belt or just holding the upper body like so. So that when my opponent tries to extract his trapped right arm, it's incredibly difficult because I've locked it elbow to elbow across the center line. My head is part of the equation. It locks close to his head. So his head is trapped between my underhook, my head, and his own trapped arm. When he tries to yank away from me, tries to posture up, all of these things are incredibly difficult. And you now have an ability to lift your opponent up and go into some very strong attacks. Not only do you have a strong hook sweep or Sumigaeshi from this position, but your opponent's ability to base out and prevent that Sumigaeshi action is greatly nullified by the trapped arm. Let's have a look and contrast the idea of Sumigaeshi with a trapped arm versus more conventional sumigeshis or hook sweeps, as they're often referred to, that we saw earlier in the video. We have an opponent here on 2 knees. This is typically the time when we start to enter into various kinds of sumigeshi attack. We looked at the idea of getting very strong belt grips on our training partner. The belt grip, combined with a sleeve grip like so, meant that we could take our training partner up into a tripod position, and get his head down towards the floor. And from here, we saw that sumigeshi is a splendid form of attack. Okay? Now, as good as this form of attack is, it does suffer from the fact that there's no trapping of the arm. And so athletic opponents will do things like plant a hand on the floor, put their forehead on the mat, and cartwheel out of the position. Okay? But all of these things become impossible when we use the arm trap method. I'm just going to show you the arm trap from another angle so you can get a good sense of it. It all starts with the idea of a cross cuff grip, just like so. Then from here, we go through and then draw our training partner forward. As we draw the man forward, we come in elbow deep on our training partner's armpit and lock his elbow on our center line. The second hand goes underneath our training partner's arm, and you have a choice here between gripping your training partner's belt, bring your knees in close, or taking the underhook position just like so. Okay? When we're chest to chest in this position and he tries to pull away from us, it's incredibly difficult. You can clearly see his arm is in that trapped position, so that when I start to elevate and lift my opponent, it's going to be very, very difficult indeed for him to base out successfully. He can't get his forehead to the mat, and he can't get the hand to the mat on the side of the trapped arm. And as a result, you're going to have a much stronger ability than usual to sweep your opponent over successfully. I want now to come in closer to the camera and show you some of the details of getting to this critical arm trap grip. Okay, everything's going to begin with a cross cuff grip. Now, sometimes you can just go through and just get a cross cuff grip on people, okay? Especially if your opponent's perhaps a little naive. But let's be honest, you hit this move a couple of times and pretty soon they're going to figure out anytime the right hand goes towards the right hand or the left hand goes towards the left hand, bad things are coming. And so very often they will rip their hand violently away from you and you're going to have a hard time getting to the hand you want. So what I generally recommend is to start with the body and go to the cloth second, okay? So what I like to do is I put my hand underneath my training partner's hand and I go through and I snatch a hold of the hand, just like so. When I grip, I physically grab the hand, not the wrist, because when I grab the wrist, I can actually get in the way of the cloth that I'm trying to grab. So I grab the hand itself. Always remember that it's illegal to start grabbing 1 or 2 digits. This is not allowed at all. So we have to grab the hand like so. Okay. So once again, we're here in front of our training partner. I don't signal my intention too early as to what I want to do. So often I'll create a sense of distraction. So for example, I'll post a shoulder on one side of his body. So all of his attention goes to the left side of his body. And then I come through and I snatch what I really wanted all along, my opponent's grip right here at the right hand. Holding this grip just long enough, I take my hand and I grip over the top of my training partner's wrist and I bring my hand through underneath so that you'll see a line of tension running through your training partner's jacket. That line of tension migrates all the way up to behind our training partner's shoulder. I pull my elbow close to my own hip so when Kyle goes to yank away from me, go. It's a very difficult thing. The cloth all the way up to the back of the shoulder controls my opponent. So once again, we start here with our training partner. I can either use a simple snatching method, like so, and then go over the top and place our hand in. So I start on top of the wrist and I finish underneath it. That creates the line of tension that runs all the way up to the back of the shoulder and my own elbow is close to my own hip. This creates an asymmetry where my elbow is in a position of strength close to my own hip and his elbow is further away from his hip in a position of weakness. So when we get into a pulling contest, my superior elbow position in my hip easily enables me to control his elbow away from his hip. Now from here, I grab the elbow, draw him in, and then I shoot elbow deep around our training partner's arm. As a result, I'm able to punch my second hand through underneath his, bring your knees in, and then from here, we're in good position to go on the attack. Okay? So that's one simple way of doing it. We go through and we use a simple snatch, grabbing, over the top, elbow position, and locking. Sometimes I will physically hold the elbow and pull that in to facilitate moving into the position. Okay, that's a simple way of doing it. Now let's get more sophisticated. As we said, You hit this move a couple of times and pretty soon your opponent knows anytime you reach for the hand, bad things are coming. So we have to create a sense of distraction. So very often from here, I will post on my training partner's opposite shoulder, and then from here, I'll go through and get a hold of my training partner's hand. And as a result, the distraction takes care of what we want, and we lock up and find ourselves in the arm trap position. Okay, so once again, a distraction method. I post another part of my training partner's body up here. Then I catch the hand that I want, and I use that to go through into the arm trap. Okay. Another sense of distraction that I often use is to use a foot on my training partner's knee as a distraction here. I put a foot just on my training partner's knee like so, and from here I give a quick push on my training partner's knee that distracts my opponent's base of support and makes it very easy to go through and get the grip that I want. So once again, here he's worried about keeping his grips away from me. I just place my foot and I distract him just like so. And as a result, we can easily go through and get to the grips that we want. Okay. Another method which I often make use of is to distract or misdirect my opponent with collar grips. Okay. I go through and I take a strong collar grip. So many of your opponents here will be interested in the idea of breaking the collar grip away. Okay. It's a common thing. We take a good grip. He doesn't like that. He goes to break it away. Whenever I see that going on, I go through and I grab a hold of the sleeve cuff, double up on it, and now we're right back into the arm trap grip. So I come in, I take a good grip, he goes to break it. As soon as I see that, he breaks my grip, but that comes at the price of me gaining a new grip. And then from here, we go straight through and into our favorite grip. Another method which I often make use of. What I do is I fake one hand. Okay, so my opponent takes away the hand from me. Okay, I fake to my opponent's left hand. As soon as I see my opponent take away, I go through and I switch to the hand that I really wanted all along. I wanted the right, I fake the left. Okay, so I go here, and there's the grip that I want. And as a result, we get through to our favorite arm trap grip. Okay, getting to your arm trap is a real combat skill, and one which you must become very, very adept at. Your basic choice is between speed and subterfuge. Okay, I'm getting a little older now, so I tend to rely more on subterfuge than on speed. I'm just going to run you through some of the basic ideas we just looked at and how they would look in competitive, combative situations. So we're here, everyone knows what I want. I want his right hand. Okay, so first option is just straight out speed. Boom. And we're in place. Okay, pretty soon your opponent's going to realize that is a bad thing and he's going to start pulling hands away from you. You can't get to the hand you want anymore. That's when we start using other methods. So for example, I could push on my training partner's knee and create that distraction we're looking for and go through and into the grip we want. Okay, so for example, I could post on my training partner's opposite hand and find ourselves in the grip we really want. I could, for example, come up here. He goes to break the grips. And we find ourselves back in the grip that we really want. I could fake my training partner's opposite hand. And we find ourselves back in the grip that we really wanted. Using these simple methods, we can get to the arm trap. And once we get to the arm trap, I promise you, your sweeping percentages will become very high. Now, I've been trying to impress upon you the idea that the arm trap is one of the absolute most high percentage ways to take your open guard game and start scoring points, sweeping people onto their back and getting the results you're looking for. I want to go now into the actual mechanics of putting someone on their back, okay? You got an arm trap, congratulations, that's good. Now it's time to actually use it and flip this guy over and show everyone the progress you're making in open guard. So, Kyle and I are in a situation where Kyle is on two knees. A big theme of this video is that whenever someone's on two knees and you're seated open guard, sumigeshi, or the hook sweep as it's often referred to, is one of the absolute best moves we can use in this situation. And out of all the various sumigeshi variations, one of my absolute favorites, one of the most high percentage, are those variations where we've successfully trapped our training partner's arm. So we looked at the idea of starting with our hand on top. Okay, so when we first grip the body, we go to the body first, then we go to the cloth. We start on top of the wrist, and we go underneath. This creates a line of tension, pull against me, where you can see tension running up through the jacket that transmits all the way across your opponent's rear deltoid and shoulder girdle. That enables us to draw the elbow to the center line, lock up, and find ourselves in a good arm trap. Okay. Now, once I get to this arm trap position, you can expect your opponent to want to pull away from you. No one likes having their arm trapped. He goes to yank away. We make sure we're pulling in with our heels and getting our hips underneath him. My intention is to get my center of gravity underneath his. Okay, so I want my hips as close to his hips as possible. The further my hips are away from him, the less effective I'm going to be. So I want to maintain my good grip, and I dig my heels into the mat, and I do kind of like a double hamstring curl, I guess, and pull my body through underneath him, like so. Okay, now my first goal, once I get this grip, is to get my opponent's hips higher than his head. Right now you can clearly see that my opponent's head is higher than his hips. That's good for him, bad for me. So what I want to do is I want to bring him up into the air and put his hips up higher than his head. When he tries to reach for the floor with his feet, I lift him higher. The hips higher than the head means it's hard for his feet to reach the mat. If his hips are not higher than his head, he can base out on the floor. And as a result, when I try to sweep him, he has two connections to the floor, makes my sweeping harder. So what I want to do is I want to get him up high. Okay, make your body strong. Now, from here, we're going to start an action of turning our training partner. I'm going to sweep to the side of the trapped arm. The only way he can make contact with the floor is through his right leg. If I naively turn him over this way and his right leg touches the mat, sweeping is going to be more difficult. So what I want to do is I want to take his leg and stretch his leg out and away from me. So one of my legs stretches him and the other one lifts him. And as a result, we get a very good turning effect. As he turns and his chest starts to face the ceiling, it becomes very easy now to take our man over and come up into top position. Very often from here, you'll get your leg caught. That's fine. Just come up on top. You're going to be chest to chest. If your opponent's lazy with his legs, then of course, immediately go through and into a cross-body position. The basic operation mechanically in any sweep is to create situations where your opponent's chest starts off facing the floor and ends up facing the ceiling. So our whole thing is to trap this man's arm and turn his body 180 degrees in midair and make his chest go from floor to ceiling. And that's going to drop him flat on his back. So once again, we start off, I catch my training partner at the wrist, then I go for the cloth and go over the top like so. When he goes to yank against me, you see that line of tension running through the jacket. That's going to make it easy for me to pull and expose the space between his elbow and his hip. The more space, the easier it is to punch through and get elbow deep with my arm. If there's a lot of resistance here, it may be worthwhile to use your second hand to expose that space between elbow and hip. Then my second hand goes in and grips. You have a choice here between the belt and the body. They're both good. The main thing is you get that arm trap. Now, from here, I put him up in the air. Easiest way to do that is to scoot underneath the center of gravity. Doesn't look like much, but those little scoots make a big difference. Now, we put him up into the sky. It's important that the hips be significantly higher than the head, so that when he reaches for the floor with his right leg, it's a difficult thing. I reach for the floor. Now, I make it more difficult by extending his leg with my leg. Once I get that extension, look at my right leg, turns and elevates up and makes his chest face the ceiling. And as a result, we can quickly go over the top and into top position. Now, as an open guard specialist, your main thing is just to get top position. Don't think you're a failure if you come up into your opponent's guard. That can happen if you come up into guard, half guard, or what have you. Of course, the ideal situation is to come up mounted, but on a highly skilled opponent, that's not always going to be possible. The main thing is you score your reversal points and you go from bottom position to top position. That's your number one concern. Anything after that, in terms of getting mounted or side, that's a bonus. So one more time. We start off here in front of our training partner, we snatch a wrist, we go in, we get our grips, we draw the man forward, and we punch on through and we get that arm trap grip. We solidify the arm trap with the underhook or belt grip. Then from here, we draw the man up, and we get his hips higher than his head. From here, he reaches for the floor with his foot. That's his last gambit to try and save himself. And then from this situation, we just extend one leg away, turn the other leg up, and as a result, we get a nice reversal and top position. This is an excellent way for you to start reliably flipping over
tough opponents from bottom position and use one of the great principles of open guard sweeping, the arm trap, and combine it with one of the greatest movements from open guard, the sumigeshi or hook sweep. Now, a move which is often used in the standing position and which I will be demonstrating in a subsequent video when we look at standing position in the Go Further Faster series is the Sasai Surikomiyashi. This refers to any situation, where I use the sole of my foot to block my training partner's legs, okay, where I step across my training partner's body, and the sole of my foot will block my training partner's leg as we throw in the direction opposite direction of movement. So if I go across my training partner's body, we get a nice knockdown towards the floor, okay? The idea is, by using the sole of our foot, he tries to take a step towards me as I pull, I intercept the step, and we knock the man down to the mat. That's the key idea behind any kind of Sasai attack. Now, Sasai is well known as a technique in the standing position, but it's important for you as ground grappling specialist to understand that Sasai and its related cousin throw, Hisaguruma, where we push on the knee instead of the ankle, are absolutely some of the most effective ways we can disrupt our opponent's balance and start sweeping people when we're working down on the floor, in particular from seated guards. I want now to look at the previous move, an arm trap, sumigeshi, and then add the idea of Sasai to get around a common problem experienced by athletes trying to use this move. Okay, just like before, we've got an opponent on two knees in front of us. That's a signal that one of the best moves we can use from this situation is sumigeshi, or the hook sweep. And one of the best variations of that is to trap my opponent's arm first so he can't base out with his arm. So we go through, as we did in the previous move, we draw our training partner's elbow forward and we lock up. Okay, I go to put my opponent up in the air, and we know our basic rule of thumb. We want his hips higher than his head. Now, his only real recourse here is to put his right foot on the floor. It's hard for him to do so, but you're always going to run into some of those athletes, long legs, athletic types, and they start moving their body over in this direction, and you can see what's happening. He's starting to base out with his foot. So when I try to hit the sumigeshi, it can be difficult under these circumstances. What we do under these circumstances is we take our foot and we place it right here in front of our training partner's ankle. When I lift with my right foot, look what happens. He has to get small bouncing steps with his foot in order to keep his balance. If he doesn't take those small bouncing steps and he just keeps his foot planted, he will fall right over. So what he has to do is start taking small bouncing steps. And whenever he takes a small bouncing step, his foot becomes weightless. So as he starts that bouncing action, I find the unweighted foot and I sweep it right away. And as a result, we end up with a beautiful sweep down to the floor. Please understand something about this. I'll demonstrate this solo. When you go to place your foot as the Sasai foot in front of your opponent, it is absolutely critical that you get off your back. It is quite difficult for you, if you're flat on your back, to have the dexterity to find his foot. It is much easier for you to turn onto your side, and then you can easily reach out, even people with very limited flexibility, and sweep away his foot and get the results you're looking for. So once again, we have an opponent on two knees. I catch my training partner at the hand, transfer to the cuff, draw my training partner forward, and lock up an arm trap. I put him up into the air. He does a good job of reaching out for the floor. Look how I turn onto my side. If I'm flat on my back, it's quite difficult for me to get a hold of his foot. So what we do is we lift him over to the side and I get onto my side so that I can easily get my foot in place. Now, as I lift, he tries to hop. I find that unweighted foot and put him over. Okay? Now, you might be saying to yourself, oh, wait a minute. Isn't that some kind of crazy timing you're doing there? You know, you're waiting for that unweighted foot. The truth is, it's a very easy move to perform. Okay, you literally just put your foot on top of his ankle and just exert pressure. As he hops, you just sweep the foot across. It doesn't require any exemplary timing on your part. In the case where your opponent is extremely long-legged and heavy, then I recommend a slightly different approach called Hisaguruma, where instead of pushing on your training partner's foot, you push just above their knee. I'll demonstrate that now. So we catch a hold of our training partner, we go through and we lock up. He goes to plant his leg, okay? This time he's just heavily planted on the floor, okay? And as a result, you feel like it might be a little more difficult for you now to find the timing to sweep him. Under these circumstances, I come up towards the knee and I just physically push his knee, make your body as heavy as you can on your right-hand side. I just physically push his knee out of the way, and we get a nice sweeping effect down to the mat. Okay, so don't be intimidated by a heavy guy who just plants the foot and doesn't hop. You'll still be able to move the leg very, very easily. There's only minimal weight on that foot, and it's an easy thing to push it out of the way. So once again, we have an opponent here in front of us. I catch a hold of the wrist. We go through, draw the arm forward, and lock up. From here, I put him up into the sky. He starts reaching for the floor. Look how easily I get my foot in front. As my right foot lifts, my left foot sweeps. This is a fine example of what we refer to as double directionality earlier in the video. This is one of the foundational principles of guard play. My right foot exerts a turning force to my left, and my left foot exerts a cutting force to my right. This creates a coupled force that easily turns your training partner over. I'm going to demonstrate it now with our training partner's ass to the camera so you can see the idea of double directionality working in your favor. So from here, we catch the arm, we go through, arm trap, and lock up. I put him up into the air. He starts reaching for the floor. From this position, look how easily I get my foot in front of his ankle. And now as my right foot lifts, my left foot cuts away. So my two legs go in opposing directions. And as a result, we get a strong scissoring effect that knocks our opponent over. Used intelligently, this Sasai addition to the Sumigaeshi will take care of opponents who do a good job of basing out with the one limb they have left to form a base of support. The arm trap means they can't use their arm as a base of support. They've got no choice. They can only use the leg. So when you go to attack that last base of support they have with your Sasai, they fall very, very readily. Used well, this can be an amazingly efficient addition to your sweeping game from open guard. Now, one of the great cliches of hook sweeping, Sumigaeshi as we often refer to it, is that it has to be done from a seated position. Okay, the idea is simple. If I have a seated position on an opponent, I can impart momentum as my body weight falls towards the floor because I'm upright. Okay, so for example, if I had a basic Sumigaeshi, I throw my body to the floor, and it's that momentum which carries my opponent over and gives me a sweep. Many people will tell you that if you start in a supine position, bring it easy, down from here, it's going to be impossible to hit a hook sweep because you have no momentum from here. Your back's already on the floor. And so when you go to lift them, it feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Okay? As opposed to a seated position where I can throw my body to the floor and end up using that momentum in my favor to actually throw my opponent. Okay? There's a lot of truth to that cliche. But like all cliches, there's usually some exceptions. If you hit an arm trap on your opponent, it's my earnest belief that you can sweep very effectively even when your back starts planted on the mat, and you'll still be able to take even tough opponents over. I'm going to start in a situation that seems pretty unpromising. Knees in, working like so. So I'm flat on my back. Okay. From here, I'm going to bring one hand through, and I'm going to take a cross cuff grip on my training partner. My intention is just to take his hand towards the center line. Nothing crazy, just the hand. Okay. Now I'm going to take my 2 feet and I'm going to pull with my 2 knees so that he comes towards me. I'm going to put my head on the opposite side of the trap. And I'm going to reach over my opponent's back and get as far down towards the belt as possible. Now, if you're a long-limbed fellow, you may actually be able to grab the belt here. If you're short-limbed like me, you may only get halfway down the back. It doesn't really matter. Okay, the belt's good, obviously, but if you just get halfway down the back, that's fine too. So we start here, cross cuff grip. So he goes to yank away. It's not easy. Okay. Now we start pulling this man in. I start with an initial grip and pull him in like so. My hand migrates further down the back. Now make your base strong. From here, my opponent goes to base out, but he has no ability to base with his right hand.
So from this situation, I click his hips up higher than his head, and as a result, we're able to take that man over and get him down to the floor. Now, the landing here, because he started on your back, is not as decisive as other sumigeshis. You're not higher than him. So there could be a scramble here where he tries to get back up, and you might not end up with the reversal you're looking for. So it's important we throw our body up and we get our head higher than his head. Now, when he tries to get back up, my head is higher than his, so you have an innate advantage. As a result, I can touch the far hip. And when he goes to get up to his knees, you'll always be able to run him down and get the top position that you're looking for. Once again, we start off like so, supine position. 99% of the jiu-jitsu world is going to tell you you can't hit a sumigeshi from here because your back's flat on the ground. Most of the time, they're correct. But if we get a hold of the cross cuff grip and bring his hand in towards the center line, we know now he has no ability to base out on that side of the body. So we go over the top and we pull him in close. If you want, you can go to a second grip. If you get the belt, congratulations. If not, go here or even here. Okay? Now, as he tries to reach out for the floor, etc., it's not so easy. And we bring him up so his hips go right over our head. My right comes out and we send him over. I use my left leg as a pendulum to get head height. I put my hand on the hip, so when he goes to get back up, we just switch our hips, and we end up in a good pin. Once again. We start off in what seems like a very unpromising situation for sumigeshi. I go through and get that cross cuff grip. From here, I draw him in towards me. We reach over the top. He tries to base out, makes his body heavy and resistant. And then from this situation, look how I bring my knees in close. And we send the man over. Hand on the far hip. We both go to get up together. And we end up with a good pin. Now, we've been looking at the hook sweep, sumigeshi, in quite a bit of detail. So far, all the sumigeshis that we've looked at have been straight sumigeshis. That's where my right foot hooks into my opponent's left hip and takes him over across my body. So, for example, in Jiu-Jitsu 101, we get a hold of my training partner. You can see the sumigeshi foot here is my right foot. It's hooked into my training partner's left hip as he goes to base out. From here, the right foot is taking him across my body. You can clearly see that lifting action, right foot in the left hip, and that's what drops him down to the floor and gives us top position. Okay? So that's a straight or basic sumigeshi. Yoko sumigeshi refers to a very different situation, where my left foot takes him over my left shoulder or right over right. Okay? So if we have an opponent here, this has a very different look to it. We're going to start with an arm trap, just as we did all the other ones. We go through, we bring the arm across the body, like so. So there's the beginnings of an arm trap. But instead of going elbow deep around the arm, I put my head on the opposite side. So in the previous move, my head was on the same side as the trapped arm. Now I go to the opposite side, and I reach over my opponent's back, and I get to the belt. So you do have an arm trap, the arm's trapped in place, but your head is on the opposite side. And there's no attempt to go in here. We just hold this position. Okay? Now, my left foot, instead of going into my opponent's right hip, goes across the body to the left hip. So it's left versus left, rather than the conventional left versus right. From this position, I use the belt grip to draw him head to head towards me, and I throw my back to the ground. This creates a situation where you can impart momentum upon an opponent, and that momentum will make it quite easy for you to bring his hips higher than his head and get a nice sweeping effect. You can clearly see that this is a left dominant sumigeshi. I had a grip with my left hand on his belt, and we swept him to the left hand side. That's what makes it a yoko or side sumigeshi. Now, once again, there's a potential here for my opponent to scramble after the sweep. So we always want to finish with our head higher than his head. So we use the sumigeshi hook to generate momentum and pendulum up. That puts my head higher than his head. So when he goes to get up, you're going to have a significant advantage and dominate the end of the scramble and ensure that you get top position. I'm going to demonstrate this from other angles. So, here we are in front of our training partner. I secure the wrist
We get the cross cuff grip, just like all the other times, and we draw the elbow across the center line. In the previous move, we were going around the arm, and we kept our head on the same side as the trapped arm. Not this time. I bring my head to the opposite side. I go over the top, and I get a hold of the belt. When he tries to pull his arm back, it's hard because of this cross cuff grip go pull. It's not easy, okay? Now my left foot goes across the body, I pull my body in, and we sweep. Now we use our leg as a pendulum to come up, so our head is higher than his head. Now, when he tries to get up with me, it's a very easy thing for us to get our hips and head higher than his. We end up with a good pin across our training partner's side. See from another angle. From here, we secure our training partner and lock up. We draw the elbow across the center line. We get a hold of our training partner's belt, and we get our head in good position. Now from here, I bring my body back towards the floor, and we start that lifting action. It turns our opponent over. We come up, hand on the hip, head higher than his head. So when he goes to get up, you'll have that advantage you're looking for to go directly into the pin. Again, Yoko Sumigaeshi, wrist, cross cuff. Draw, head position, and belt. Now from here, I pull my body in. I take my body back and away, and we turn the mat up and over and into the pin we go. This is a very simple, very practical way of trapping your opponent's arm and getting a beautiful high amplitude sweep right over into top position. Now, you'll remember at the start of this video, we plugged the idea that from open guard situations, there are a set of foundational themes that are involved in sweeping your opponent from open guard. One of those critical themes was the idea of action-reaction, that at the higher levels of the sport, it's hard just to hit moves on tough, resisting, knowledgeable opponents. And very often what we have to do is to capitalize upon your opponent's defensive reaction to a first move so that you can get a second move to work. This works extremely well in the case of Sumigaeshi, because like any Sumigaeshi, you're facing your opponent, you have the option of sweeping to both sides. It's a very easy thing to simply switch your foot position and go from left to right and vice versa. One of my favorite things to do is to create an arm trap. Now, the great disadvantage of an arm trap is it conveys to your opponent which side you're going to sweep them to. It's obviously going to be the side of the trapped arm. Pretty soon, especially if you hit the move successfully a few times, your opponent's going to realize, okay, he's trapped my right arm, so I'm going to put all my body weight down to the left-hand side so he can't sweep me towards the trapped arm. And they will overcompensate with their body weight to avoid the strong initial sweep. And you can capitalize on this by sweeping to the direction they're leaning towards and using action-reaction to easily knock them over. This is a very, very high percentage way to work. So, we have an opponent here in front of us. And we do a good job of coming through and trapping our training partner's arm. Now, the problem with this is that now your opponent knows you're going to sweep to my left-hand side because I've got his right arm trapped. Okay, that's the smart thing to do. If my opponent doesn't react to this, sure, we put his hips up higher than his head, and we just sweep him over. But you hit that 3 or 4 times in your training partners, they're intelligent people, they soon figure out the danger, and they start doing things like this. You get a hold of the arm trap, and they start sagging their weight down and away to this side, down and away, down and away, like so. And now it's very difficult to sweep them in the direction you want it to go, okay? Whenever we see this happening, just take your hand out, and then from here, cover his wrist with your elbow. Now all I do is just touch my shoulder on the floor. And as a result, you get the easiest Sumigaeshi of them all in the same direction his body weight is going. So you create a simple dilemma. If you trap the arm, your opponent knows you have to sweep towards the side of that trapped arm. The only thing they can do is sag their body weight down in a way to prevent that from happening. Then you just trap the arm on the opposite side and you've got the easiest Sumigaeshi of them all. So once again, we get an arm trap. From here, I've trapped the right arm, so of course he's anticipating a sweep to the right, to his right-hand side. I try, and I can't get it because he's sagging the body weight down. So I just take my underhook out, and I cover the elbow and the wrist. Don't just cover the elbow. Now he can put his hand out wide, you can't get him. Don't just cover the wrist, because now he can put his elbow out wide and you can't get him. Go over the top and trap them both. Now from here, take him in the same direction he was going. Okay? So when you see that overreaction to the initial threat of the arm trap, take advantage of it. Don't just try to go in the same direction in the same predictable way that you've been doing the last few times. Go in the direction his body weight is going. Now, if my opponent's an idiot and he doesn't react, his body weight's not going anywhere, just throw him in the direction of the original move. Now he wises up. He sags the body weight down, go over the top, and sumigation to the opposite side. Now your opponent gets really smart. He realizes, oh, I overreacted, and I gave him an easy sweep on that side. Now we go from a dilemma to a trilemma. I threaten on his right-hand side. He sags away. And from here, I come in, he comes back towards me. Right back into the arm trap side. And you can form an incredibly simple back and forth reaction in response to his reaction, sweeping from one side to the other, that all started with a simple arm trap into a predictable sequence where your opponent has to react to the initial threat, and you feed off that to sweep left, right, as many times as it takes to put him on his back. Now, we've been looking at the idea of trapping our training partner's arm on one side of the body so that we can facilitate sumigaeshi or hook sweeps towards that trap side. And we've seen this as one of the absolute most effective ways of getting our opponent over onto his back and scoring some good points. Now, so far, the arm trap we've been looking at is a pretty conventional one, where we started at the wrist, we went up to the cuff, and we drew our training partner forward and trapped the arm like so. Okay. We also saw the idea of going cross cuff and then over the top for a Yoko sumigation. A different way for us to go into an arm trap is to begin with an arm drag motion, where I secure my training partner's wrist and we drag across the body like so. Now, if my opponent was naive and just stayed down on two knees, his back is available. And now we can start threatening our training partner's back. So what many of your opponents will do is put this leg up. That's a smart move on their part, because the moment they put the leg up and I try to go to my opponent's back, he can step over my legs and from here end up in a good position. Okay? So this is an intelligent response on the part of my opponent to the threat of an arm drag. We go in, we drag. If he keeps the knee down naively, it's pretty easy for us now to start going in and attacking our training partner's back. So a smart thing for him to do is to climb for height and get his leg up higher than mine. Now if I come in here, he just put his knee back down on the floor, he's halfway past my legs and in good position. Okay? So very often what we'll do is we'll combine a sumigaeshi action from that trapped arm off the arm drag and take our opponent over with a sweep so he can't just counter us so easily. We go in on our training partner and we drag the arm on by. I see him put the leg up. That's a clear signal to me that it's no longer an intelligent thing for me to go towards his back. Okay, there's too much danger now from him stepping over our legs. So instead, we're going to take our arm and we're going to go forward and hug his knee here, elbow deep, just like so. I'm going to take my body through and bring my training partner down towards me. So I have an excellent control of my opponent's body through the leg and the arm drag grip. Now all I'm going to do is bring my knees in towards my chest and recline backwards. And as a result, even if my opponent puts his left hand on the floor for base, it means very little. A sumigaeshi action, lifting here with my legs, easily tilts my training partner over and gives us top position across our training partner's side. So, once again, we're relying on the principle of trapping our training partner's arm. Only it's a different form of arm trap now. It's essentially just an arm drag. We pin our opponent's arm across the chest like so. So instead of coming through and doubling up with the classic arm drag grip, we just stay with the arm drag. The classic arm trap grip. We stay with an arm drag and capture our training partner's legs. So once again, I start off here with wrist control. I go into a pretty standard form of arm drag, drawing the arm across the body. If my opponent stayed in this position, one of the best things we could do here would be to go through and start threatening our training partner's back. But he's an intelligent opponent, and he puts the leg up like so. So now it's risky for me to go for the back. Instead, I go in elbow deep and seize my training partner here at the leg. I draw his body in towards me. My knees come to my chest. He can base out with his left arm, but not his right, because it's still in that arm drag position. It's trapped across my chest. And as a result, it's very easy for me to bring my knees all the way up to the chest. He bases out with his left hand. Doesn't mean a lot. We just lift, turn. I keep my grips at the leg and the arm, and I use that to pull my body up across side, and we end up in an excellent position. Once again, wrist control, arm drag, he puts the leg up. We quickly go in, get a good bite on our training partner's body, and then we use our feet to pull our body in underneath them. Now everything goes up and overhead, and we end up with a beautiful sweep for the finish. Okay, this is an excellent variation. There is a second variation of the same move where instead of me going over my opponent's leg, I can go through and sweep under the leg. Let's have a look at that now. The beginning of the move is identical. Wrist control, arm drag. He puts the leg up. This time, instead of me going over the leg, I go through elbow deep and I scoop the leg in like so. Similar kind of action. The main idea is to get his knee close to my torso. The further his knee away from my torso, the harder this move becomes. So I want to make sure that I pull myself to him and at the same time, him to me. Now from here, we start that same lifting action that we saw previously. And once again, we end up in good position on top of our training partner. So whether you choose the over grip or the under grip, you're going to find you have an excellent Sumigaeshi opportunity. The basic principle behind the move is the same as all the other arm traps. Get his elbow across the center line so he can't base out on that side of the body. Only now, instead of us going through into the classic arm trap, we're staying here with the arm drag grip. Okay? He counters the arm drag by putting the leg up. Not a bad move on his part. Okay, I can't take his back anymore. It's not safe for me to go for his back. However, Sumigaeshi is a fine option here. I just go through, I pull my body in underneath him, and now everything goes up and over the top. And we end up across our training partner's side. This is an excellent way to use the arm trap principle in a slightly different scenario to sweep with Sumigaeshi. Now, we've been looking in a lot of detail at variations of Sumigaeshi, and you'll notice that almost all of them occur with our opponent starting the situation on two knees. It's probably fair to say that the vast majority of times in which you employ Sumigaeshi, you will do so upon a kneeling opponent. One of the great cliches is that butterfly Sumigaeshi or the butterfly hook sweep can only be used on kneeling opponents and is useless against standing opponents. There's a lot of truth to that, okay? I'm not going to lie to you, the overwhelming majority of times you employ the butterfly Sumigaeshi will be in situations where the guy is kneeling in front of you. But don't kid yourself. You can hit very interesting variations of Sumigaeshi even on a standing opponent who starts standing in front of you. It can be done. The way for us to teach you is to look at the basic Sumigaeshi in the kneeling position and look at how it would have to be modified to do it in a standing situation. So, if we have a kneeling opponent in front of us, the Sumigaeshi we've been looking at mostly involves the idea of getting our opponent somewhat bent over so we could access the belt behind him. And the classic Sumigaeshi involves my left foot against my opponent's right hip and coming down to the floor and taking the man over. Okay, that's the hook sweep or Sumigaeshi, butterfly Sumigaeshi that most people are familiar with. There is also a second variation of Sumigaeshi, the so-called Yoko Sumigaeshi, where instead of my left foot going in my opponent's right hip, my left goes across to his left hip. So we looked at a variation of this. We looked at several variations, but one would be one where we get a hold of our training partner, we get a hold of the belt, and you can see now my left foot is here inside my training partner's left hip. And from here, he goes over the left shoulder, and we take the man over with Yoko Sumigaeshi. Okay? What's true in every single variation of Sumigaeshi, whether we use it as a standing throw, which we'll look at in a separate video, or as a sweep, there's one critical ingredient. I don't care how many variations you show me of Sumigaeshi, there's one common thread.
And that idea is my opponent's head must be lower than his hips. If my opponent's head is higher than his hips, it's almost impossible to hit successful sumigations. It feels so difficult. Okay? But what makes them successful is the fact that we're able to create situations where the head goes low and the hips go high. And if you can do this, you can start throwing people's sumigashi. Now that's exactly why most people struggle to perform a sumigashi on a standing opponent, because it's almost impossible for the guy standing to bring his head lower than his hips. If Mateus is standing over me, I'm not even sure what kind of grip I could employ to bring his head lower than his hips. And the legs are so extended here that it would be very, very difficult for me to bring the head down lower than the hips and get the move to work. Okay? But there are some ways you can do it. And one of them involves the use of a lasso guard. This is a very effective way to bring your opponent's head lower than his hips and create a rolling effect where you can sweep the man from a standing situation. So if we have Mateus here in front of us, and we manage to successfully get a hold of our training partner's sleeve cuffs, like so, then from here, we're going to create that initial angle with the training partner, and we're going to thread our foot all the way through and create a standard kind of lasso entry. From here, I'm going to go into a Yoko Sumigashi. I'm going to take my left foot through and underneath my training partner's hips. I'm going to drop my second foot to the floor, and I'm going to turn my body. Can you see what happened? Even if Mateus spreads his base wide, okay? If I turn my body like so and I bring the foot forward, we create situations where if Mateus tries to bring the head up, the lasso makes it very, very difficult. All I have to do now is push off the floor, and we employ a Yoko Sumigashi action that takes my training partner straight over. Now from here, as always, we use our legs like a pendulum, come up and get our head higher than his head. So when we both go to get up together, you'll always be able to dominate the top position and score your points. The beauty of the lasso here is that it drags your opponent's head down. Here, the lasso arm gets pulled down and my head starts to go below my hips. I have no ability to base out. My arm is caught in a lasso. And essentially what you do is you lift up the other thigh and you force your opponent into a forward roll. And that's exactly what a guard sweep is. So, we have an opponent here in front of us. We go through and we secure our normal cuff grips. As our training partner goes to pull away from here, we lock on, we get a foot in our training partner's hip, we get the angle we need to thread in that initial lasso. Okay? Now, from this situation, look how I take my foot and I hook through. My left foot goes to his left hip. Make a strong base for this. Now from here, as I plant my second foot on the floor, look how knees to chest bring him in. As my left foot extends in a sumigashi action, the head goes low as the hips go high. We send the man through. Okay? This is an excellent and very practical way to employ a Yoko Sumigashi action on a standing opponent. Let's look at it in some combative situations from a variety of angles. So here we go in our training partner. He's in a good strong base, making things difficult for us. We place a foot on the hip. We thread our foot through. We've got that initial lasso action. Okay? I stay relatively shallow with the lasso. Okay? As he tries to pull away from us from in here, look how we just dig the foot through and we make that Yoko Sumigashi action. Now from here we turn, everything goes in, and we send the man over. We always want to finish with our head higher than his head. So when we go to fight for position now, you'll always be able to come up, score the top position you're looking for, and finish on top. This is a simple and very practical way to employ a Sumigashi sweeping action on a standing opponent. Now, we're trying to push upon you the idea that the principles behind sweeping and positional movements from guard are often more fundamental and in that sense more important than the moves themselves. One of the fundamental themes that we're looking at here in this video on guard play is the idea of getting our opponent's 2 feet off the mat. The idea is if you can get your opponent's feet off the mat, there's not much they can do to defend, and you're going to take them in the directions you want them to go. We've looked at Tomoe Nage as the premier method of doing this, of enacting this principle, but it's not the only method. Sumigaeshi, often referred to in jiu-jitsu as a hook sweep, is a classic example of work. We have an opponent on two knees, and we get a hold of our training partner. We use our foot in our training partner's thigh to start lifting and turning people and getting them over onto their back. Okay, so Sumigaeshi always has the use of a hook behind our opponent's leg and a lifting, elevating action, which puts our opponent over onto his back. Now, we can use variations of this against a standing opponent in conjunction with spider guard. And our intention is to get our opponent's feet off the mat and go back to that very, very useful principle of sweeping from guard position. If you can get your opponent's feet off the mat, you're going to sweep a lot of people. So we'll hit a standing opponent. And from here, we're going to go in and get double cuff grips on our training partner, just like so. I'm going to throw in a spider hook on my training partner so that I get him a little out of balance. And I'm going to put my second foot here behind my training partner's hips and buttocks, right where the hamstring meets the buttocks, so to speak. From this position, I control both of my training partner's sleeve cuffs. As he tries to pull away from me from here, we're going to get lots of opportunities to use that spider guard to start drawing his body weight forward. Okay. Again, as always, my intention is to bring his head over my head. In conjunction with, instead of putting my foot on the hip as I would for Tomoe-nage, now we're putting a foot behind our training partner's buttocks. Okay, so we get him stepping forward. Now we put our foot here behind our training partner's buttocks, and we start a lifting action that turns our training partner over and brings his head well over our head. The variation here from Tomoe-nage is that we no longer have a foot on the hip. So it takes a little less training time to be able to get the foot to the hip. We just put a foot behind the buttocks and get that man's head moving forward. So here we are, we're working from bottom position. We get double cuff grips on our training partner. And however we get it, we get in a good grip on our training partner like so with that spider hook. Look how we just pull in with our foot like so. When he tries to hunker down, he can't because the spider hook there in his bicep makes it impossible. It's relatively easy for us now to push in on our training partner's two sleeves and then start a lifting action that drives our training partner straight up and over our head and into the position where we score our points. The advantage this has over Tomoe-nage is we don't have to take the extra time to put our foot on our training partner's hip. The disadvantage it has is we can't take the same amplitude of throw. You can't pick your opponent up and throw him physically over your body. It tends to create a forward roll in your opponent rather than a lifting throw. But that's fine. They all score 2 points in the end. Just as long as there's a change in position, you're going to score. Jiu-jitsu doesn't reward amplitude, so you don't get extra points or bonus points for throwing them high as you would for Tomoe-nage. You get the same amount of points for throwing them low with Sumigaeshi. So here we are. We've got an opponent on top of us. We get a hold of both of our training partner's sleeve cuffs, and from here we go in and we get our training partner drawing forward with that action with the spider guard. Our second foot goes here behind the buttocks and starts bringing our training partner forward. Okay. Now we just push in on my training partner's two wrists. As a result, we get a nice little sweeping action straight down to the mat. From here, the onus is on us to keep control of our training partner's sleeves and use our leg as a pendulum to get up to our base so that we're always higher than our opponent. As he tries to get up, you're still controlling his elbows. As he goes to get up, it's going to be very easy for us now to start going in behind our training partner and scoring points. So this is an excellent way for us to once again get our opponent's feet off the mat and as a result create powerful sweeping motions over our head. Now, we've been looking at the idea of a sasai action in conjunction with Sumigaeshi. And we saw that if we can hoist our opponent up in the air, we can use our foot to cut away his foot with a very elegant switch finish to that sweep and put our opponents down. An action that looks very similar to sasai, but has some noticeable differences, is the action of Hiza Guruma, or the knee wheel. It's the same idea. You push on your opponent's leg, but the location of the push is different. The location is your opponent's knee rather than his ankle. But there's a deeper point too. It's not just that the location changes, it's the direction of the push and the nature of the push changes. When we looked at sasai out of Sumigaeshi, and we took our training partner up into the air, our foot found his foot. And what we did is we pulled inwards. Okay? So I pulled his foot towards me. and reaped it away. Okay, which is one. So we took our foot, found his, and we pulled it inwards. Okay. In Hisaguruma, we do something rather different. We push his knee along the mat. Now I'm going to say something to you. Hisaguruma is one of the easiest ways to topple and off-balance an opponent when you're in a seated butterfly guard. It's almost laughably easy, even on experienced opponents. As long as their knee's on the floor, it's just so damn easy. All of us should be using this move a lot more than we currently are. Okay, the opportunities for it are there all the time. It's not that difficult to do. The conditions for it are easy to satisfy. And when you do it, it's a very effective sweep. I'm going to say something else too. Sometimes with Hisaguruma, you don't always sweep the guy all the way down to the mat. You don't always get a perfect sweep where he goes over and falls over and you score points. It doesn't matter. You will always be able to off-balance him using Hisaguruma. And then there are many subsequent attacks you can use off the off-balancing to actually score. It's an incredibly easy and simple addition to your arsenal that at the very least will off-balance your opponent and set up other attacks, and in many cases will put them flat over and give you a good score. So, what does it look like? I'm going to introduce you first to what I think is the easiest Hisaguruma to start with. That's one where I get a hold of my training partner's arm and I get a good grip here, high up on the triceps. Now, as you probably know by now from watching these videos in the Go Further Faster series, there is a seam that runs down the back of every sleeve, regardless of manufacturer. That seam is an important thing because it functions like a rope around your opponent's arms and shoulders. If I access that seam, it's like I have a rope around my training partner's arm. When he tries to pull away from me, it's incredibly difficult. If I just grab anywhere on the jacket like so, this is a feeble looking grip in this situation. There's some situations where I could use this, but this is overall feeble. If my opponent just violently yanked away from me, it's not hard for him to get away. But when you grab that rope running behind the seam, you can play with that in ways where you can completely control your training partner's elbow. What I typically do is I take my wrist and I put it under his elbow. Then when I bring my own elbow high, it's so hard for him to get his elbow position back. When he tries to bring his elbow down towards the floor, it's so damn difficult. Okay? So what we do is we target the seam that runs down the back of the sleeve. I go through, I lock up, and I put my hand and wrist inside his elbow. When he tries to bring his arm back, it's so difficult. I don't want his hand pommeling back inside. That's not what I want. So we take his hand past our shoulder. My second hand can be anywhere on his body. Here I'm just grabbing the upper back. Okay, put your hands on me. Okay, so I'm just grabbing some random grip here on his upper back. Now I take my foot and I put my foot on his knee. Notice how when I do it, my toes point outwards. I do not put my foot randomly on his knee. Now when I push on his knee, it just slips off. When I put my toes outwards, I can contour my knee around my foot around my training partner's knee. So that when I lift and pull with the arms, and at the same time I push on his knee, I lengthen the space between his elbow and his knee. The greater that space becomes, you stretch your opponent out like a log, and like any log, he rolls very easily. When he tries to reach for the floor, he can barely make it. And from here, it's an easy thing for us now to turn our training partner over and take top position. So the action behind Hisaguruma from Butterfly Guard is always the action of taking his knee and elbow apart from each other. The closer his elbow and knee together, the stronger and more resolute his base. The more the knee and the elbow come apart from each other, the easier it is for him to be rolled over that elbow and knee. Okay? So if we do a simple test, we're going to have our training partner start in a turtle position, just like so. In the turtle position, he has an excellent base of support that feels very stable. Now I'm going to ask you to take your elbow forward and your knee apart. Now, he has no ability to base out and is easily dislodged. Okay? So that's always what we're looking for with the action of Hisaguruma. So once again, we'll start off here in front of our training partner. I go through and I get that good grip on my training partner like so. So from head to head position, I hold the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve and I flick my wrist through underneath his elbow. I prevent him from re-pommeling in and saving himself by taking his hand past my shoulder.
Now my second hand goes on him, and I just put my foot, toes pointing outwards, on my training partner's knee. He goes to yank away from me. It's so damn difficult. Now as I draw the elbow forward, I put my head over my own knee. Don't try to do Hizaguruma with your head in the center line. Now when you push, your foot always comes off. Put your head down over the arm you've trapped. Now when I push, there's no danger of slippage. And as a result, we end up with a beautiful sweep and roll. Now, sometimes just the action of pulling your opponent's elbow and knee is enough to put them over. But a lot of times I recommend you use your second foot with a light sumigaeshi action and hook sweep your opponent over and combine the benefits of Hizaguruma and sumigaeshi together. Typically it makes for a smoother finish. Okay? So once again, we have a training partner here in front of us. I take his hand out to the outside, I fix up my grip, I take inside wrist position, and I send his hand over my shoulder so he can't recover. My second hand just goes anywhere. It might be the lapel, even cross lapel, but I generally prefer to control both sides of the body under these circumstances, so I typically just put a hand on his deltoid and roll 4 fingers into the flap of the cloth. When he goes to yank away from me, it's so difficult. Now I place my foot and I position my head. When he tries to put his hand on the floor, put your hand on the floor, look how I never allow that. I'm always pulling it up off the mat. If the hand goes on the floor, you can push the knee, but he won't fall over. Come back. So we always must focus on taking the elbow up high and the hand away from the mat. Now, because my head is over my own knee, it's very easy for me to push out the knee like so and stretch him out. Now, from here, you've definitely taken him out of balance, but then I just add a little sumigaeshi action to lift him over, and we end up in good position. Just going to show you a small detail with regards to your feet. You will often hear me talking in this video about the idea of using your hands and feet as though they were one another. In particular, as though your feet were hands. Don't just place your feet clumsily on people. Don't just come out and put a heel on them, like so. Don't come out and put a ball of a foot on them and hope for good results. You're not going to get good results this way. Okay? If I asked you guys to perform an ankle pick, standing up, you wouldn't just clumsily grab your opponent in any kind of way like this. You would come out and contour your hand around your training partner's Achilles heel, so that when you exerted a pulling force, it would be an effective one. Okay? So too, when you go to use your feet. Learn to contour your feet. Okay? So you bend them around the thing you're trying to grasp. Don't put your foot on your opponent's knee. Grasp his knee with your foot. That's the idea that I'm trying to get you towards. Use your feet like hands. So here we are. We get our initial grip. Secondary grip, locks up. I place my foot and contour the sole of my foot over my training partner's knee. I bring my head over my own knee, never my head on the center line, where there's a great danger of slippage. We come in like so. So you can see what happens here. My knee, my ankle, my arm, and my head are in a straight line. And I push my opponent's knee down that straight line. Don't go down to the floor. Now from here we both get up together. Get up. It's a scramble who gets up first. The idea is to stay up on your elbow, so that from the situation when we both go to scramble to get up, my head is higher than his head. And you'll always have the advantage, which will give you the top position you seek. Once again, Hizaguruma. From here, and top position. Okay? This is the classic Hizaguruma from Butterfly Guard. A very, very simple and very, very effective way of working to sweep or off-balance your opponent. Now, we're looking at Hizaguruma, a very simple and very effective method of sweeping from seated butterfly guard that forms a beautiful partner with your sumigaeshi attacks. You get good at these two, you're going to sweep a lot of people. Most of what we demonstrate in the Go Further Faster series is done with a jacket. Okay, it's a fundamentals video, and most fundamentals classes are taught in a gi. So that's the way we're working. But let's understand that most fundamental moves in the sport of jiu-jitsu can easily be adapted to the no-gi situation, and Hizaguruma is no exception.
You don't need to have a gi on your opponent. You can be highly effective with this in no-gi situations. So let's look now at a simple no-gi grip, which we can use both with and without a gi. I often make use of this no-gi grip when I'm working in a gi, which we can show you now. In the previous move, we looked at the idea of using the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve and taking advantage of the strength of that grip. But let's understand that the real purpose of this grip is to keep my opponent's hands and elbows away from the mat. And you can do that just as easily with underhook grips. Very often what I'll do with an opponent is I'll come through and I'll lock up an underhook. But the underhook's a little different from most. Normally, when we underhook people, our intention is to dominate the shoulder here. But the underhook that we use for Hizaguruma is a little different. We come down the arm to the elbow joint. Remember, our intention is to prevent our opponent's hand getting down to the floor. So what we do is we start high on the underhook, we form a false grip here with our arm, and we slide down so we can get a hold of our training partner's elbow. Just like before, I put my head to the outside so that my foot, my knee, his hand, and my head all line up in a straight line. When he goes to put his hand to the mat, it's almost impossible. Then from here, we start that same push action that lengthens him out and gets the elbow and knee moving in opposite directions. And as always from here, we do a simple lifting sumigashi action, and then we come up on top into good position. Once again, a simple modification that will work equally well with and without a gi, and shows the basic concept that most of the fundamental moves we show in the Go Further Faster series can easily be adapted to a no-gi situation. Say, for example, my opponent had a hand posted on me here. This would be a good example where we can just push the arm through and find ourselves right there in that underhook grip. Second hand just goes over the top, and I just cup my training partner over the tricep. So I'm just using an underhook on one side and a cup on the other. The underhook is a little different from most. Instead of dominating the shoulder, we come down here to the elbow. And he goes to pull away from me. It's a difficult thing. Okay, I switch from a square butterfly guard down here to a staggered butterfly guard. 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Now from this position, it's an easy thing for us to push in our training partner's knee and end up with a nice action down to the floor. Most of the time when I demonstrate the Hizaguruma, I'm doing so in a fairly slow, controlled fashion so that you can follow the movements and learn them yourselves. But understand that in a live situation, usually you get a better result when you push the knee back and pull decisively on the arm. However, there's one thing you do want to avoid. You must avoid kicking your training partner's knee. Not only is that an unpleasant thing to do for your training partner, he won't want to train with you tomorrow, but it's actually mechanically less effective. People often see me teaching Hizaguruma, and they will see the foot here on the knee, and they think, oh, well, if he does well by pushing, wouldn't I do better by kicking? When you go to kick the knee, there's a greater danger of slippage. You just slip off, and that's not going to help anyone. Secondly, the kick tends to evaporate quickly and not make his knee go as far away as a push. It tends to just go like so. The idea is to place the foot, not kick the foot onto my training partner's knee. So once we get a hold of our training partner, I place it, and rather than kick violently into my training partner's knee, you get far better results with a controlled push. But when you push, make sure you pull on the upper body and you'll get the results you're looking for. Now from here, we just lift the man over, making sure that my head is always higher than his head, so we end up in good position. So when you're going live with your training partners and you get to your favorite grips, don't just kick your training partner. You'll just make him mad, and you won't be effective. The idea is to place it. Then from this position, make a strong resistant body. From here, we want to give a good decisive push that never degenerates into a kick. Okay? That push is what wheels the man over in a very short order and gives us a beautiful sweep down to his back.
Now, one of the great themes of this video is that Kazushi, or off-balancing, is the precursor to success from open guard. Of all the various open guards you can employ, the spider guard is one of the very best for creating disturbances in your opponent's balance that creates sweeping opportunities. Because you're working inside your opponent's arms and getting his elbows into convoluted, difficult positions for him to manage, you get people immediately out of balance with this method. You can use Spider Guide very effectively on standing opponents, but nowhere is it more successful in its application than when the guy's kneeling down in front of you. Most of the time, I like to see my students go in and get a hold of the belt and start sweeping with Sumigeshi if their opponent is down on 2 knees. But if your opponent is staying on 2 knees and for whatever reason you just can't get a hold of the belt, Spider Guide is a great option as well. Let's have a look at how we might use it. Okay, we've got an opponent kneeling in front of us, and for whatever reason we're having a hard time getting to the belt and bending his posture down. Well, one thing you can almost always get a hold of is your opponent's sleeve cuffs. It might be because he's grabbing your pants, or it might be you just got a hold of them anyway. However it happened, we go in here and we get double cuff grips, just like so. Now we're going to snap his grips off, and then we're going to turn our palms up, just like so. We're going to put a foot in the hip, and then from here we're going to put a foot in the bicep. There's no need for you to be in such a rush to put your back on the ground. When your opponent's on 2 knees, it's okay to be in a seated position like so. If my opponent was standing, then it's not really a good idea for me to be back on the floor. I want my back flat on the mat, and I want to work from positions like so. But when Mateus is on 2 knees, it's fine to be up just like so. Okay? Now, here's the key to understanding Kazushi from Spider Guide when your opponent's on 2 knees. What I want to do is I want to put his elbow over his head. If you can put your opponent's elbow over his head, you will immediately get him out of balance. So I fall down to the side and I take his elbow up and over his head, just like so. You can see what happened. Mateus had to put his right leg up just to maintain his balance. This creates a situation where it's so easy for us to drop our bottom foot and get into a good sweeping position. Okay? So once again, we're here with our training partner. I managed to get double cuff grips, just like so. I place a foot on the hip and I put a foot here, like so, in the bicep. Now, as I fall down, I'm not going to fall to my back. I'm going to fall to an elbow. So I bring his elbow over his own head and I go down to my own elbow. From this position, I turn my body out so I'm on my side. And then I just drop my foot down to the floor, and I don't put him down directly to the side. I bring him forwards around the corner. When Mateus tries to get back up, you've got that annoying foot in the bicep. It's damn difficult. And it's really easy for you to simply hip heist like so. So as you both go to get up together, you have a huge mechanical advantage. And as a result, almost always you're able to score points from this position. So once again, we start off with an opponent here in front of us, and we go through and we get a hold of double cuff grips, just like so. I put a foot in the hip and a foot here in the bicep. Now I focus on getting his elbow up high over his head and onto my own elbow, like so. Try to avoid coming down to your own back or side. Okay? I want to be able to turn the corner here. And the way for me to be able to do that is to stay up here propped on my elbow. Now I block my training partner's knee. I reap with my bottom foot, and I lift across and forwards with my top foot. And I look where I want my opponent to land. And as a result, we end up in good position. Now this is a truly beautiful sweep. The scissoring action is a beautiful expression of double directionality. One of the great themes of this video. It's an underlying principle in almost all of the best jiu-jitsu sweeps, where we exert simultaneous forces in opposite directions upon an opponent. It creates a scissoring effect. A force going to the east and a force going to the west at the same time turns our opponent violently down towards the floor. So here we are. We start off in front of our training partner. We go in and we get double cuff grips. We snap his grips off and put our hands in position to go through here. Okay. Now I start a pull. I come down to an elbow, and I focus on getting his elbow vertically above his own head, just like so. The closer to vertical his elbow goes, the more successful we're going to be. Now I drop my foot. As my left foot pushes to the west, my right foot cuts to the east, and I look around the corner. That's where I want him to go. I don't sweep to the side. That's where Mateus' base is. I sweep to the front. And that's where we get a nice knockdown down to the mat. Now, you hit this move successfully a couple of times, and you're going to find your opponents get very nervous once you start getting a hold of that Spider Guide. So they all start posturing straight up in order to prevent being knocked down.
whenever we see this kind of thing going on, we snap the grip off and we go into spider guard. Whenever we feel we're having a hard time bringing them through, then we go to our back. Okay, instead of falling to my side, I just bring my foot over the top and we just throw our feet into an attacking position. And from here, it's a simple thing for us to lock up our ankles behind our opponent's back. When he tries to pull away from us now, I release the spider guard. I rely now on my feet to hold him in. We start a knee pull that brings our opponent in towards us. And this gives you a vast number of potential attacks. You probably guessed the one we're going to go for first, the triangle. We bring the arm across the body. We get a hold of our training partner's head or my own shin. And from this position, we start that turning action combined with a scoop grip around our training partner's leg. And this makes it very easy for us to lock up the figure of four and get into our finishes. So whenever we feel the scissor sweep becomes impossible because of my opponent's body positioning, the triangle is a beautiful follow-up. In the scissor sweep, we always try to go onto our elbow. But when I feel that's proving impossible, then we use the momentum of falling to our back to go through and lock up. Now, once we get the initial lock, he's going to try to posture up and away. So it's important we pull in with our knees and break the man down towards the floor. And from here, we get a hold of either his head or my shin, and we start that turning action. And as a result, we can lock up a good figure of four in our training partner and get a strong finish. A different form of spider guard, also extremely useful when someone is down on two knees, is to get a hold of our opponent's lapel and one spider. So instead of having double cuff grips here, I'm going to get one cuff grip. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a straight lapel grip here, not cross lapel, straight lapel. Okay. From this position, we're going to put a foot on the hip and a foot here in our training partner's bicep. Now, the beauty of the lapel grip is it gives much stronger control of your opponent's head, and as a result, much stronger control of his posture. If I hold here, I have no control of Mateus's head. Okay? Here, I have excellent control of the head. When Mateus tries to posture up and away from me, you can easily pull people up and forward and get them out of balance. Okay? Now, as you will remember from earlier in this video, one of the great symptoms of a successful Kazushi upon your opponent is getting a hand to the mat. Let's look at how we can use this spider guard to easily get an opponent's hand to the mat and as a result go directly on the attack. So we've got a talented opponent here in front of us. From here, I go through and I fix up a straight lapel grip, and then from here I go through and there we go, we're right away into a good attacking position. Look out, from this position I can easily get my opponent's hand down to the floor. Okay, I've said this before and I'll say it again. As long as you can consistently get your opponent's hand snapped down to the mat, you're going to have an easy time going into the various attacks that we're teaching from open guard. And of course, the easiest one from this position is to throw our legs over the top and once again lock up the attack of the triangle. If I feel for whatever reason the triangle is proving problematic, it's not a difficult thing under these circumstances to turn that triangle across and go into three-quarter Jujigatame. If my opponent moves away from me under these circumstances, it's not a difficult thing for us to go across and find ourselves in the omoplata position. Okay, they're both great options. But the main thing I want to see you focusing on is this idea of taking cuff and straight lapel grip. When he goes to yank away from it, it's not an easy thing. Then we plant a foot right there in the bicep and snap that hand down to the mat. From here, we kick over the top and go into the triumvirate of submissions: triangle, armbar, omoplata. Okay, and from here, all of them are great options. Whichever one you choose, I leave that up to you. Such is the power of this grip that you can even realistically take people up off their knees and onto their feet. Okay, we have a kneeling opponent here in front of us. From here, I go through, fix up my lapel grip, and it's not impossible under these circumstances to use this spider hook to simply flick my opponent up onto his feet and drag him up. Okay, once we get him up off his feet, now there's 1,000 things we can do in terms of other forms of guard that we can use to knock people down and take top position that we'll be looking at later on in this video. But don't neglect the use of spider guard and its various manifestations: double cuff and lapel and cuff, to attack a kneeling opponent and get on the attack.